Good afternoon. What an amazing crowd. I'm not surprised at all given who our guest is this evening, but it is great to see each and every one of you. Thank you for coming out. I'm Lisa Muscatine, co-owner of Politics and Prose, along with my husband, Brad Graham, who's here. Our daughter, who is a big Caitlin Clark fan, is not here because she's home puppy sitting for us. So sorry about that. And Chris knows her. So anyway, she wishes she were here, but I'm glad all of you are here. And I think Alan went over the protocol of book signing afterwards and all that stuff. We have a lot of books. Please buy as many as you would like for yourselves and others and friends and relatives and coworkers and advance, holiday gifts. That would be great. I'm so thrilled to have Christine Brennan here. I've known Chris for a long time. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. I think most of you know, some of you know her very well, some of you may not know her. She's one of the most respected and influential sports writers in the country, simply put. She started her career at the Miami Herald, where she was the first ever woman to cover sports. She then moved to the Washington Post, where she was the first woman ever to cover the Washington, then called Redskins. Doesn't that seem like a long time ago? That's crazy. The Washington Redskins. And in fact, she has some pretty choice stories about being in the locker room with the Redskins. But I'll leave that for another time. She is now a national sports columnist for USA Today, an on-air commentator for CNN, PBS NewsHour, and NPR. On her game, Caitlin Clark and the Revolution in Women's Sports, which you see right here, great cover, is her 8th book, I think. It's her 8th book. And she's written 7 previous books on a range of topics. In fact, I don't know how many of you have read one of her earlier books, Inside Edge. It was named, it's a bestseller, and it was named one of the best sports books of all, 100 top sports books of all time by Sports Illustrated. No mean feat. Chris has also covered every Olympic game since 1984. And if I was trying to recite all of her awards and accolades, we would be here till a year from now. So I'm not going to do that. As I said at the outset, I've known Chris for many, many years. We were colleagues at the Washington Post, and she's been a dear friend for just as long. And because I've known her for so long, I've had the privilege of watching her practice her craft. And what makes Chris so exceptional as a journalist is that she doesn't just cover who won and who lost, what the score was, what favorite player or favorite team. She really looks at sports in the broader context of culture and history and what sports mean and to our society, how they define who we are as a people. And that's what makes her special. And what this means is that she doesn't shy away from topics that are controversial or uncomfortable or even challenging reportorially. Her doggedness over the past decade helped expose sex abuse in Olympic sports, often taking as long as a year to win the trust of survivors who then did tell their stories to her that she was then able to publish. Holding people accountable in sports, powerful, famous celebrities has been one of her trademarks. It's a staple of her work. She was, for example, tougher on most of her colleagues on Tiger Woods and Michael Phelps for their moral and ethical lapses. And she didn't shy away from the drama, which some of you may remember, in figure skating surrounding the assault of Nancy Kerrigan by Tanya Harding in the 1990s. And lastly, and this really matters to me, I'm a former college sports athlete myself during the Title IX era. Chris has been an unflagging champion of Title IX and of women in sports overall, especially women athletes and women journalists in particular. Now she's turned her attention to one of the greatest sports stories in recent memory, the arrival in the nation's consciousness of a new women's basketball superstar, Caitlin Clark. And I can think of no journalist more suited to help us understand the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark and to help us unpack how her presence on a basketball court and in filling arena after arena across the country has landed with fans, players, young girls, coaches, and with the WNBA itself. Chris will talk about what she learned covering Clark's inaugural season as a pro basketball player and the unkind and often unfair commentary that has followed her and even followed Chris writing about her. And by the way, this was not a book she did with Caitlin Clark. Just want to flag that for everybody. Were the WNBA in America ready for Caitlin Clark? We'll have the answer an hour from now. Please join me in welcoming Christine Brennan to Politics and Prose.
Oh my gosh, Lisa, thank you. Thank you very, very much. You know, we go back a long way, colleagues at the Washington Post, dear friend, and I just want to say, Lisa Muscatine, Brad Graham, right here, are the owners, of course, of this incredible bookstore that is so much more than a bookstore. It is a pillar of our community. You have changed for the better, Northwest DC. This corridor, you own it, and everything you do. Just as a neighbor here, just a few blocks away, I just want to say thanks to you for what you do for our community and of course, for the book world as well. So Lisa and Brad, let's hear it for, yeah. Thank you. No, thanks so much. And my goodness, I'm looking in the faces of so many friends and editors and George and neighbors and colleagues, and my goodness. But I want to tell all of you guys, I mean, what a crowd. I just have a little bad news. You know, Caitlin Clark is not here. No. But I am, and the book is. And I just want to say a huge thanks to all of you for coming. I'm sorry we don't have some chairs and seats there, but feel free to, you know, mill around. The food is my gift to all of you. This is a little bit of a party. You know, when those dark days yeah, someone's loving the food. Those dark days in January and February, this book was crashed. I had to get it done about 4 or 5 months, and it was something. And, you know, 12, 14-hour days of writing, and I knew I could figure it out, and dear friends and neighbors and everyone, let's go for a walk. Of course, it's minus 20 in January, but we still did it. And all those days when you look at the laptop, so many of you who are in the business or writers or just in general, you know what it's like to do a project, and you kind of like have your mind go ahead. And when it was difficult, when I was trying to figure out the jigsaw puzzle, putting everything together, I pictured July 13th at Politics and Prose, and here we are. And so I cannot tell you how happy I am to see all of you and how honored I am for each and every one of you to come here tonight. There's no way I'm going to do shout outs to everybody because that would be ridiculous, and I would, of course, forget somebody. But I really do think it's important. Since we are a sports crowd here, I do want to introduce a couple people, just a couple shout outs to people here who are exemplary and have done amazing things in the sports world. Did I see Brianna Scurry back there? There she is. Oh, here she comes. It's going to be that kind of a day. How are you? Great. Thanks for coming. You're the best. You're the best. I'm going to give you a book. So, you know her, the 1999 Women's World Cup team, the soccer goalie. For Brandi Chastain to have that winning kick, there had to be a save earlier in the penalty kicks, and it was made by Brianna Scurry. And also, Brianna Scurry is actually a character in this book. And when I say character, I mean in the best way possible, quoted one of the most impactful and important quotes. I'll be talking about it, Bryce. So thank you for your honesty and for just being a great colleague, friend, and obviously one of America's greatest athletes. Thank you. And right in front of Brianna Scurry, you may have heard of a certain swimmer who is from the area, only the greatest female swimmer of all time. Nope, she's not here. But her mom and dad are, the Ledeckis, there they are. Mary Jen and Dave Ledecky, thank you for being here, and thank you for giving us Katie Ledecky, and also Michael Ledecky. Yes. Thanks so much. I also see one of our greatest Olympic figure skating coaches ever. Michael Weiss's coach has helped so many Olympians achieve their dreams. Someone who's been in several of my other books, Audrey Wisiger. Audrey? And again, I may have missed someone, but I do know there's another mom and dad who are here. Katie Ledecky, of course, the greatest of all time, but the swimmer, the American who won the most medals last year in Paris at the Olympic Games, 5 medals from Arlington, Tori Husk. She's not here, but her mom and dad are here, Jim and Ying Husk. They're there. Okay. We got the parents out of the way. We got the Olympic gold medalists out of the way, and the coaches. So again, if I missed anyone else, but a day like this and a moment like this, that we're celebrating sports. This is fun. The real world is out there. We're talking sports and how lucky we are to do that. So again, if I've missed anyone, please let me know. But any other gold medalists that walk in, we will certainly let everyone know you're here. Caitlin Clark is a story that I would never, even 2 years ago, have expected to write about or talk about. I, like many of you, was introduced to Caitlin Clark by a stunning three-point shot. I was watching on my iPad in my kitchen, a few blocks from here, in February of 2023, when Indiana was beating Iowa, 1.5 seconds left, just a regular old Big Ten game in the dead of winter. And the ball is in Caitlin Clark's hands, and she is shooting the ball, and she's sideways, and her legs are askew, and somehow this thing just flies into the air, and it goes in. And Iowa wins the game. I couldn't particularly care less about the game, other than actually my siblings all went to Indiana, so I kind of wanted to, think what are we going to do about Indiana? And of course they lose the game, and Iowa wins the game. And I wanted to watch those replays, and I watched them again and again. And so many other people, we were all texting, the family was, "What, did you watch that? Did you see that? What was that?" And it helped me, ladies and gentlemen, to understand immediately the impact at this point of a junior in college, a female basketball player. Because I've been very fortunate to cover sports around the world and cover so many amazing things, Super Bowls and Olympics and men's and women's Final Fours, the Tiger Woods, the length of his career. And there I was wanting to watch the replay again and again. There was something about this, a female athlete pulling this off, doing something that I had never seen before. And I think that started my interest in this young athlete. And it started my quest to maybe write a few columns, which is what I did for USA Today. And I broke the Olympic news that she was not being put on the team. I broke that story, broke a couple other stories. Again, never met her, never talked to her, but just watching from afar. And I found myself thinking throughout the process that as those incredible attendance, the crowds, the lines in January, waiting for hours for people to get into these huge Big Ten arenas to watch a woman play basketball. The TV ratings, eventually, the final game that Caitlin Clark played in college, which of course senior year in 2024, where 4 million more people watched the women's final game in basketball than watched the men in their final, the next evening. And as I said to myself, as I kept looking at all this, I thought I did not think I would see this in my lifetime. And even then, as I kept, of course, keeping an eye on it, I still was not even thinking of a book. In fact, it was exactly almost a year ago, July 10th of last year, when I had my first conversation about this book with Rick Horgan, my editor at Scribner. So there was no plan to do a book, no plan to, I was getting ready to go to the Olympics to cover the swimmers and others. And it was not even on my radar screen. But when Scribner was interested, and then the next day, literally 24 hours later, I got an offer, no book proposal, sight unseen. Again, Caitlin Clark, the power of Caitlin Clark. I was off and running on this project, something that I did not anticipate doing. And along the way, I certainly had a lot of support, and especially from family. And I do want to just take one quick second as I was doing the shout outs here. I didn't forget, but I just wanted to make sure I say a big thank you to my niece, Leslie, and her husband, Max, over there in the travel section. And then if you happen to have a book, and if you look at the dedication to that book, you'll see it says this: for Helena, my favorite athlete, and Peter, my favorite robotics engineer. And Peter is not here because I think he's just doing robotics engineering, but Helena is here. Helena, just give him a wait. There she is. Yeah. Thank you. And it does take a village in terms of, working on things late at night and as I said, wondering where you're going with the story. So I also have to say this: luck is a big part of anything. Because the Olympic swimming trials, USA Swimming, put the Olympic swimming trials in Indianapolis in a football stadium last year, I then went to Indianapolis to cover those stories for 10, 11 days. And my sports editor said, can you get over and write a column or two on the Fever and on Caitlin Clark? And of course, because of the incredible interest in Caitlin Clark, because of the hits and the eyeballs and the views and the clicks, they wanted that. And I said, sure, I'd love to go over there. At that point was when I met Caitlin Clark for the first time. The general manager of the Fever, a woman named Lynn Dunn, was actually the coach of the University of Miami Hurricanes when I was a Cub reporter starting out at the Miami Herald in 1981. They sent me over to write a story about this coach. We got to know each other, and we've been in touch ever since. So now I'm meeting Lynn Dunn again, and she said, why don't you meet Caitlin? And so we talked for 5 minutes, off the record, and she's as good as you'd hope she would be. She's my height. She's 6 feet tall. I might be a little bit under that. She looks you in the eye. She shakes your hand firmly, old school all the way. In the book, I say she's 22 going on 40 or 50, and it is true. And we had a lovely little conversation. In fact, we talked about Iowa and Northwestern, and I did remind her that Northwestern, the first 3 times they played Northwestern, did beat Iowa. To which point, Caitlin said, what happened in the rest of the games that they played? And yes, Iowa got the better of my Northwestern Wildcats for sure. And again, just a lovely little moment to get a chance to say hello to her. And then again, kept going, covering the swimming. And as I said, then the editor and I met, or had a conversation, a Zoom call, and we were off and running on this book. As soon as the Olympics were over, I came back, and I ended up going right to Indianapolis. And for the next 6 weeks, I was in Indy or wherever the Fever were, and I was covering the team and getting a chance to do the interviews and everything that is necessary when you're writing a book. Everyone, of course, knew I was writing a book. Caitlin Clark was just terrific. Every question I asked her, she answered. I probably asked 40 to 50 questions for the book. As you'll see in the book, she's quoted extensively. Nothing was off limits, and every answer she gives, I'm sure many of you have heard stories about athletes, and some of them are not so happy with questions, and some of them don't want to answer questions. Tiger Woods, he was not great about questions that he didn't like and didn't want to talk about things. No matter what the question, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what the issue, no matter whether she lost the game or won the game, Caitlin Clark looks you in the eye, answers directly, goes on for a minute or two, and then often will go on a tangent just to give you more information. And that is what she does. And she did it sometimes morning, afternoon, and evening. She was at times being interviewed 3 times a day during games. Sometimes athletes, pro athletes that I've covered and known over the years, haven't been interviewed 3 times a season. And she was as accessible an athlete as we had last year, because she, of course, had that great college season. She was gone for 8 days between the NCAA final that South Carolina beat Iowa till the WNBA draft, and then was around again for another several months, and answering every question and never flinching. And there's always something about her where she wants to end on a very positive note. So even if the question is about how she missed a shot to lose the game or whatever it might be, she always finds a way to say, we will work harder next time, and looking ahead, and something that is just, I think, so admirable about her, especially as someone who's at that point was 22 years old. And the autographs. I think you've seen the pictures or looked at the videos. The way she dives into the crowd before the game and after the game. And as she says, and I think this is so important, it's girls, of course, that she's a role model for, but she also says the boys. She said, I want to sign those autographs for boys and girls. There's something, again, very admirable about that, the way she looks at her role and understands, again, far beyond her years, what she means to those kids. Now, why? Why Caitlin Clark? What is it about her that, sadly, unfortunately, all those great athletes in the WNBA, those great players, never got the attention they deserved. I tried. Lots of us tried. George, of course, you at the Post, we did a lot of coverage of it. But it was just one of those things where people either, the male-dominated sports media, just not wanting to cover it. I would go on radio shows. There'd be guys laughing about women's basketball. They're just rolling on the floor. It's all jump balls. You've heard those arguments and those conversations going back 20, 30 years. Why? Why Caitlin Clark? She's a basketball player, but she's also an entertainer. When she is chucking it from the parking lot and it's going in, there's something about that you've never seen before. Those passes, and by the way, we were talking about this back in the room before we came out. There's a pass that you will see from today's game that is absolutely one of the gems of an athletic maneuver that you will see in basketball or in sports. Caitlin blocks a shot, gets the ball back from Aaliyah Boston, and then fires the ball the length of the court to Sophie Cunningham. The ball literally just goes over the top of the fingers of the defenders of Dallas. I mean, like by a tiny little centimeter. You saw it. And Sophie leaps, catches it, puts it up and in. And the announcer says, "Touchdown, Indiana Fever." But think about that. That is not something you see normally in basketball, right? That you've watched basketball, men's, women's, whatever. That is just so different. And not only that, but the call, touchdown, right? And that will be replayed over and over and over. So when you ask, or when others ask me, why her? Why this one? What is it that this is the first person who's broken through, transcending sports into our culture? Caitlin Clark is obviously one of the most famous athletes in our country. Frankly, she's one of the most famous people in our country. People just love her. I'm looking at all of you. I'm thinking, you're here in this. Obviously, it's a little warm. Sorry about that. We'll get to Q&A soon, so we can move around a little bit maybe. But it's that. It's the entertainment value, and you've got grandmothers and grandfathers in the produce section who are talking about Caitlin Clark. And the only comparison I have, ladies and gentlemen, to what, if we've seen this before, was Tiger Woods. Again, a grandmother, grandfather, mom, whoever, who couldn't tell you the difference between a birdie and a bogey, would plan their Sunday afternoons around Tiger Woods' tee time at the Masters. And that's how you get those TV ratings. And that's how you have interest that far extends beyond sports. So Caitlin Clark, interviewing her, talking to her, talking about her, as you guys know, there's certainly a lot of controversy that has followed her. And the way she handled everything. I asked her, she liked a Taylor Swift post. You may recall, right after the first and only debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And among other people who liked that post, there was a story quickly on Twitter, and it was Jennifer Aniston and Oprah Winfrey and Kylie Kelsey and Caitlin Clark liked this post from Taylor Swift. The post was talking about voting and registering to vote, getting kids to vote, but it was also an endorsement, of course, of Taylor Swift to Kamala Harris. Well, you have to ask Caitlin Clark that question, right? So the next day I flew back. There was a game that night. And after she got one question about her face being in a corn maze, I was the killjoy, all right? But that's fine. That's journalism. You're not there to be their friend. You're there to ask questions. And I said, Caitlin, there was a post that got a lot of attention last night, and your like of it, did get a lot of attention. Try to start with a smile and be civil and friendly and human. And then I said, what did that post mean to you? And are you potentially going to be endorsing Kamala Harris for president? This question had to be asked, right? This story is out there. And I was the only one, obviously. There were a lot of young journalists around me, a few others there in the press availability for Caitlin, so I was happy to do it. Caitlin Clark answered the first part, went on for about a minute talking about the importance of voting. She had voted the last time, she's voting this time, register to vote, all of that. And then that was the end of her answer. She did not go there with the second part. And for me, that was fine. That was fine. I mean, again, she's 22. She's getting ready for a basketball game. A journalist has asked a question that needs to be asked, and she gets to answer it however she wants. And she did. I'm sure there was some criticism for her not endorsing Kamala Harris. I'm sure there was criticism. I'm sure there were people that were thrilled she didn't, thrilled that wish she had. And that's very much in keeping with what so many other top professional athletes do, right? Michael Jordan, remember that line, the Republicans buy sneakers too. Tiger Woods never wanted to go there. When Serena Williams was going down to meet the governor to talk about the South Carolina Confederate flag, Tiger Woods would never even say why he wasn't going to South Carolina or why he was going there to play. And there were those who were then very, very kind to Tiger and said, well, he's young. It's okay that he doesn't get a chance to, he doesn't need to talk about this. Well, Serena Williams was 5 years younger and was already going to talk to the governor, right? Different strokes for different folks. Obviously, that's what our world is. But Caitlin Clark was asked about race quite a bit, and we can certainly get into that. I'm happy to discuss that issue. It's a huge issue. The idea of a 74% black league, which is what the WNBA is, and this is all in the book, and for years, as we said a few minutes ago, totally ignored by the male-dominated mainstream sports media, and all those great names from the past, who we know some of them, certainly if you're a sports fan, you know that, but never transcending sports and being a part of a conversation in the way that Caitlin Clark is. And all those athletes, and here it is Caitlin Clark, and of course a white woman from Iowa. Now, I mentioned Brianna Scurry. This is where you come in. As a white woman, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And if I'm going to do this book right, and if I'm going to talk about these issues, and by the way, the book is like 95% Caitlin Clark magic, right? You're going to relive all the games in Iowa, and you're going to relive all the last season, and it's sports. But I also wanted to deal with this issue. And so I talk about the relatively rude awakening from some people, including Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops, the flurry of falsehoods from Cheryl Swoops. That's all in the book, just relating this sense that, well, let's put it this way, they weren't exactly the welcoming committee for Caitlin Clark, who, by the way, is the economic rocket fuel for the entire league, right? And is the rising tide lifts all boats. But it was so important to me to have many, many other voices in this book. Tamika Catchings, the great star of the Indiana Fever, is throughout the book. Talking about some of these issues, especially of race and Caitlin. And I had the great Dr. Harry Edwards. I'm sure many of you have heard of him, maybe read him, seen him speak. He and I have done Super Bowl panels together. We're friends. I've known him forever. And of course, he's very well known as being the impetus for the 1968 Mexico City Black Power salute by the two U.S. sprinters, going all the way back to 68. And so Dr. Harry Edwards, and I wanted his voice, and I talked to him in August last year, and he's fighting cancer out in the Bay Area, and he's just an amazing person. And he loves Caitlin Clark. He thinks she is great for basketball, just great for everything that, the reason why I'm sure many of you are here and are big fans of Caitlin. And he said, these are his quotes in the book, the WNBA failed the players. And his point was, you need to have seminars. You need to talk this through. You see this coming, right? You can see the barnstorming around the country. You see the incredible TV ratings. You see people standing in line, the attendance through the roof. And you just, here she comes, and you don't talk it through with your athletes, not because they're damsels in distress. Oh, no. They are terrific, strong women, most of them college degrees. But this is such a new thing. And again, Harry Edwards' voice is so important to me in the book. Seminars, Zooms, sociologists, psychologists, having conversations before the season started. It obviously never happened. Would it have been the panacea? Would it have changed everything? Maybe not. But his point is, you explained to the wonderful veterans in the WNBA, black and white, that they are the foundation, they are the wind beneath the wings of Caitlin Clark and that rookie class that came in last year. They are standing on your shoulders. And it's for the benefit and it's all for the good that they've been there, and now here comes Caitlin. This is the logical next step for the success of the league. And then Brian Oscuri, we talked, and I thank you so much for your time, and you agreed with Dr. Harry Edwards. And you talked about opportunity. And it's such an important voice because you are the first Black superstar on the most famous and important sports team, women's sports team on the planet, the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team. And absolutely. And so just in a few paragraphs, Bri, you add your voice, and it's a very powerful, powerful statement. And as I've been doing the book tour, the book came out Tuesday, so it's only been a few days, but I have already been in the Midwest. You'll see me in the Midwest for the rest of my life selling this book, maybe from the back of a pickup truck or something. I don't know, Iowa and Indiana. But that's a conversation that I'm bringing up, and I thank you so much for the trust that you placed in me to be able to quote you and talk about these issues. And Dr. Harry Edwards, of course, who's not here, but the same. Just that's how we have conversations in our country, right? That's what journalism is. And I think it might surprise some people who maybe aren't, necessarily loving me and loving my reporting, and that's okay. That means I'm probably doing my job. But to have many, many voices discussing the myriad of issues involving Caitlin Clark. I could go on, but I know it is a little warm, and I also know that we want to start the signing, and my watch, of course, is yes, there we go. Gone about a half hour. So I love questions. Nothing is off limits. Everything's on the record. No holds barred. This is your chance. I ask the questions. Just your chance to get a chance to ask questions of a journalist. So with that, first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you again for being here. It's just an absolute delight. Thank you so much. And let's go to the questions. And I think you were up first, sir. Yes, say your name, please. And
my name is Nathan, and I'm a recent college graduate from here in the Washington, D.C. area. My question is, of all the Olympics that you have covered, is there? Would you say that there's a story or an experience that was particularly memorable for you, and if so, what was it?
For the Olympics, to cover the Olympics? Well, Alyssa mentioned Tanya Nancy. I mean, there's never going to be a story like that again. But I will. I'll bring it back to this book. I've covered many of the U.S. Olympic gold medal games for the women's basketball team, and one of the things that I've noticed, and it's unfortunate, but basically the press tribune, it's tumbleweeds. Very few journalists cover the team. Why? Because they're going to win. And also, it is such a busy sports calendar at the Olympic Games that if you've got a couple journalists there covering, the sports editor is going to say, I'd love for you to cover women's basketball, but we've got our local rower, or we've got the women's soccer team, or whatever it might be. And so that's one of the things that informed me when I was writing the column about what a terrible decision it was to snub Caitlin Clark from the Olympic team, which is a chapter in the book called Olympic Snub. And it's, that certainly has been something that's been important to me. I've covered 5 or 6 of those gold medal games, 2000, 2004, 8, London 12, definitely Rio in 16, and then just this past Olympics in Paris. So that's something that's important to me to make sure to give coverage of women's sports. But the takeaway for that is that there's just so few people that do cover the women's Olympic team. And that is, again, that would have changed completely. When you bring the attention magnet, Caitlin Clark, then you've got eyeballs, and all those athletes that never got the attention they deserved, as said earlier, are going to get the attention. Interesting, in Paris, I had a Brazilian journalist and a British journalist come up to me and say, "Where's Caitlin Clark?" And they would have covered the women's soccer team, or the women's basketball team. And by the way, it's not that they don't want to cover it. It's just, again, the multitude of sports that are going on. And, and I have this in the book as well. The TV ratings for the women's basketball actually went down, and the TV ratings for women's soccer went up. So the missed opportunity was extraordinary. And think about it, the Olympic, the hockey, the NHL will close shop for a few weeks to have the professional hockey players at the Olympic Games in Milan coming up in February. And believe it or not, another Olympic Games, the Winter Games. And there's a reason why hockey is doing that, because you want to grow the game globally. And that's why the NFL plays in Europe. So you think about this, And you've got all of these organizations, sports organizations, leagues, whatever, that can't wait to have that global stage. And then you've got the female version of the dream team, Caitlin Clark. Even if she played 5 minutes, 10 minutes, all the eyeballs on Asia Wilson and so many of the other great players that never got that attention until now. That's my take anyway on it. And that, of course, went away when they didn't put Caitlin Clark on the team. So I think it's the worst Olympic team selection decision I have ever seen, and I've covered the Olympics since 1984. I think it was that bad. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Hi there.
My question is about the WNBA and the management of it. There was a game during the tournament, I think it was a year ago, where the three-point line was mismarked.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it because, you know, we're Caitlin Clark fans and we're new to the WNBA. And I said, how could this happen? And then I watched, it wasn't actually the WNBA, but I watched this year, and the reffing is just abominable. And are they?
You are not alone on that.
Are they actually complicit in this kind of jealousy that, you know, they don't want, you know, one person to be standing up and
Right. Yeah, so the question, like a conspiracy, yeah. And it's a very valid question because it's being asked all over everywhere, right? Well, when I say valid, it's valid because you asked it, of course. But it's also, when I say valid, it's a little suspect because now I'm thinking of like X, you know? So, but no, all joking aside, it is out there big time. I do not think there is a conspiracy, and I know you weren't necessarily saying there was. I think it is the fact that the WNBA is so financially dependent on the NBA and is just, you know, so far below the NBA in terms of any opportunity to hire, to pay salaries that are legit, to keep good people. The NBA, we found, you know, as people are talking about, they hire the WNBA officials, and, you know, they're people that are certainly would never be in the NBA, for example. But keep in mind the difference in the finances. And I'm not excusing this by any means. I'm just saying, Caitlin Clark, as I'm sure you heard, $76,000 was her salary last year as a rookie, as a first-round pick. Now, she's making millions, $28 million deal, 8 years in Nike alone. She's probably making, I don't even know, 35, 40 million, whatever she's making. I mean, she's fine. But the salary itself, and well-deserved, every penny of it, my goodness, again, as a role model for girls, our daughters, our nieces, our granddaughters, the girl next door, extraordinary, and boys as well. So $76,000. The top pick in the NBA draft, $57 million. So it is a little different. So what's happened again, but what's happened is we are literally, one of the reasons I wrote this book, as Lissa was referring to, we are watching something that we have never seen before. We are seeing one woman bring a league to a level that it never would have been unthinkable 2 or 3 years ago. So within that, there are growing pains. I'm sure the question would be, well, what do you do about this? So I will answer that. Kathy Engelbert, I know, I like. She finally talked to me briefly for the book. I tried 4 or 5 times to get her to talk at length. That's her call. But that's too bad because there are many, many issues that I would have loved to have her voice. I deal with all those issues. And I have lots of other people talking about things as well. Leaders need to lead. And I'll give you a perfect example of something that happened that I know you would be relating your comments to. So that game where Marina Mabry literally plows into Caitlin Clark like a freight train, which the videos of it are absolutely awful. Again, keep in mind, of course you play Caitlin Clark tough. Of course you play defense on her. But Marina Mabry needs Caitlin Clark to be healthy and playing great to help Marina Mabry's salary go up, right? Again, it's kind of like Tiger with the male golfers. And the refs met for 5, 7, 10 minutes, whatever it was ridiculous, and then did not toss her out of the game. And so there she's still playing. What a terrible, terrible message that was being sent. And again, the eyeballs are on the WNBA as never before. You've got people watching that never cared before. And this is the product you're showing. Now, if, again, it's easy for me as a journalist to say what to do because I'm not the commissioner and I obviously would never have this role ever. But what I would do if I'm Kathy Engelbert, and I've said this on a few shows, is the next day you put out a statement or you get in front of the cameras and you say, that was unacceptable, whether it's Caitlin Clark or anybody else, and the referees blew it. And we are going to now have a 1 or 2 game suspension for Marina Mabry because we are now going to tell people, we're going to tell people this is unacceptable. Certainly unacceptable to treat Caitlin Clark like this, but unacceptable to treat anyone like this. It was just an absolutely dead ball, out of control hit, very much like the Kennedy Carter hit, where again, Kennedy Carter a year earlier, hip check is a chapter in the book. That's every little detail of that, revisiting and talking to people about it and adding new thoughts and comments. Again, what is going on? So your point is well taken. I think it is a financial issue for the WNBA for sure. I also would say the NBA, Big Brother, owns 60% of the WNBA, which is either individual owners or the league, needs to step up. And they didn't step up on the charter flight thing. And I know that because I was the journalist asking someone at the NBA, I was going to write a column, give them a chance to give me a reason why they are letting Caitlin Clark walk through baggage claim and people filming her like she's an animal at the zoo, which is absolutely, if something bad happened, would they ever allow that for LeBron James or with Patrick Mahomes? Of course not. And so how is that happening? I asked the question. This person said, can you wait a couple days? It was a weekend. I said, sure, I might have more information. And by Monday, they had charter flights. Now, I'm not taking credit, believe me, but what on earth is that? They've been saying no charter flights. That's what they've been, we've heard it. The questions have been asked at the draft, other places. No charter flights for the players, meaning they're going to fly commercial. They're going to go through TSA. They're going to walk through. They had to put Caitlin Clark by the window and have some of the bigger players near her just to keep her away from the other people on the plane. I mean, this was happening for a preseason game. And then, maybe a light bulb goes off, and now they have charter flights. Is this any way to run a league? And that's the NBA, Big Brother, finally getting it right, but only, I guess, because some journalist made a phone call. I've never seen anything quite like it. And when you've got this moment, this is the moment, right? This is it. This is the opportunity. Again, totally understand the racial component, the concern, of course. But you've never had this before, and now you have it. And I think, again, that's among many things that you were alluding to. Thanks for the question. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming today. This has just been really wonderful. I'm from West Des Moines, Iowa.
I couldn't tell you were from Iowa.
If you can't
But you're from West Des Moines, and a certain someone that wears 22 is actually from
Yes.
West Des Moines.
I wanted to ask if I've read much of her book, not quite all of it, and I completely agree with you. Caitlin could have only become the center of attention and the star that she is because she came from Iowa. And
I'll actually explain.
I'm very serious about this. And I wonder if your book covers 2 particular issues. And one was Denise Long, who was scored over 100 points in one of her games when Iowa was 3-3 basketball, and ended up being on the Johnny Carson show long before Caitlin Clark made it onto Saturday Night Live. And also, I was in law school when Vivian Stringer was the coach, and Vivian Stringer did so much to build up an interest in women's basketball at the University of Iowa that I honestly don't believe Caitlin would have had that kind of response but for the work that Vivian Stringer had done there.
Sure.
I'd like to hear what you have to say about this and then ask your question.
Okay. Well, was that why don't we, that's like 3 things, so we've got a lot of people waiting.
Oh,
do you want me to do that, or do you want to ask the question?
The question is, I don't hear professional men criticizing or naysaying Caitlin as much as I hear it from the women. And am I wrong in thinking that that's a difference? Or maybe that this kind of naysaying that went on happened much earlier among the men's sports? basketball?
Well, I should take the first two, but I'll take the last. No, in Iowa, it's all in the book. There's a chapter title called "If You Build It, She Will Come." I couldn't resist. Field of Dreams. But yeah, 6-on-6 women's basketball, all through there. Yeah, from that moment, of course, Caitlin Clark rises. It has certainly been unusual for me to see women, some of whom I've mentored and people I cheer for and help, and of course wanted them to rise up, seemingly either reluctant or I don't know, throwing cold water on something that actually then is on their beat. And I've never seen ever in journalism where someone hasn't wanted their beat, what they're covering, to be bigger and more important and have more eyeballs. But I've seen that a few times. I put a couple anecdotes in about, for example, a journalist who I worked with who was ranking, they had the power rankings for the rookies. And the first ranking, and Caitlin had the 10 turnovers in her first game on May 14th. But by the third game, which was that weekend, she was shooting lights out in New York, and Billie Jean King, and everyone's there to see her play and loving it. And she was already Caitlin. And, you've got this kind of going on. And when my colleague did her rookie rankings for the first week, and it's not the end of the world, didn't put Caitlin Clark first or second or third, but put her fourth. And little things, but just, you wondered. And I just point those out. And a lot of the book is, this is a journalistic look at this moment. It is unauthorized. I did not work with Caitlin. I didn't want to work with Caitlin. And it might sound, ominous to say it is an unauthorized book, but that's exactly what you want, right? Caitlin's book, well, I'll buy it and it'll be amazing. And she'll, whenever she writes it, that's not this. This is that look, and I also, of course, wanted to be able to cover her in the future. And if I was in business with her, which is you're in business with someone, if you're writing their book, then you can never cover them again. So there's that. So I've seen that. I've noticed that. I do think there's definitely some women commentators as well as male that are very, very positive towards Caitlin. If you watched the broadcast today, Rebecca Lobo and Ryan Rucco, Rebecca Lobo is just, when I say positive, it's actually also the truth. So it's the way it's accurate. And again, this notion to kind of focus on negative is very interesting to me. I've certainly done that throughout my career. If there's something negative, you absolutely report on it. But when you've got someone playing as she did, definitely then it's a surprise for sure. And that we did see some of that. And I would just say to my colleagues, you cover the facts and cover the news. And if Caitlin Clark plays poorly, you say it. If she's playing great, say it. And it should be okay, to do that for sure. And then your point about Iowa, I will say this. If Caitlin Clark doesn't go to Iowa, Caitlin Clark's not Caitlin Clark. If she was, there must be an Iowa. Oh, there, hey, how are you? Got the Hawkeyes in the house. The Muffet McGraw, Notre Dame, recruited her, and she actually had a soft commitment for Notre Dame. So Caitlin Clark was planning to go to Notre Dame. If she'd gone to Notre Dame, makes sense. If I was like a Catholic young woman, wants to go play, obviously, academics, great. Muffet McGraw says in the book, the great coach there, that there's no way she would have let her shoot 18, 22 times a game, and those threes, again, from the next county. No way, because Notre Dame would have had a much stronger cast of characters around her. UConn never, Gino Auriemma never, of course, recruited her. Yeah. But if she had gone to UConn, same thing. It would have, the rest of those players, she would have been a cog in the machine. She would not have been the machine, right? She would not have been the focus of everything. So thankfully, because of Lisa Bluter, great coach, Iowa's an excellent program, but not the blue blood program. Now it is after those last two games, those two seasons, but it's not that blue blood program that, say, again, a UConn and a Notre Dame were. What a different story. Well, I wouldn't be writing this book and you wouldn't be here, because there is literally no way Caitlin Clark, she needs those years in college to be that launching pad so that everyone cares about her when she goes into the WNBA. So thanks for your questions.
Thank you so much.
Joe Yasharoff, hi.
Oh my gosh, hi Chris. I'm a friend and fan of Christine. I'm not sure if I can follow that act, so maybe I should just go back to my seat. But
give it a go.
Okay, congratulations on the book. Thank you for the food, and congratulations on the sellout, the Christine Brennan sellout like Caitlin Clark. So a friend of mine, Jack, who's sitting back here, wants to know, right? There's Jack. Asking for a friend, right? Has Caitlin lost some of the passion for the game because of the physicality and some of the physicality off the court? I know Michael Jordan suffered, some of the physical, the bad boys of the Pistons. But has she lost some of the passion, do you think, for the game because of the treatment she's getting by
Yeah,
some?
certainly. Again, that's a topic that's out there in the social media world. I don't think so. And if you watch some of today's game, I mean, those passes were unbelievable. She's the one difference, as you well know, Joe, and your friend over there knows, is that she's been injured.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is unprecedented. And I have this in the book, and I was able, when she was first injured, to actually put that out there because I'd done the research and talked to the high school coach, Kristen Meyer, her high school coach. It was sophomore year for Caitlin Clark in high school when she turned her ankle and missed one game. She never missed a game in high school. She never missed a game in AAU basketball. She never missed a game at Iowa. And, of course, she never missed a game last year with the Fever in the WNBA. So the fact that she started the season, she missed actually that one game with that it's the same left leg. It's quadriceps, groin, whatever. And then that was the exhibition. No one was preseason. No one's too worried about it. Played at Iowa, hit that shot from half court. All the kind of things that she was doing. Okay, she's back. She's fine. And then she missed the 5 games early in the season, and then she had to miss, again, several games, is back now. I think that's it. I think she's never gotten a chance to get in a rhythm. And because she has played all the time, and everyone who's been an athlete here, who's cheered for a young athlete here, the idea that you train and you plan and your whole life is around this as a young person, and then you can't play, that is a shock. And it's certainly been a difficult time and a difficult challenge for Caitlin Clark. And so I think that's what we're seeing. I think that's it. And getting into the rhythm, certainly the three-pointer, has been off the last X number of games. But I would say because she's been injured, I think that there's certainly an explanation. The way that team, the Indiana Fever, looks, they have been hot and cold, right? They've been great, and then they've been terrible. She's been missing, all these different pieces. They bring someone new in. It's been a lot. If they get going here, the way they played, today, for example, over 100 points, they could win the WNBA championship because once you get in the playoffs, you upset somebody and then you're on your way. So I think they're looking at the long game here, but there's no doubt that this is an unusual situation for Caitlin Clark, and she's talked about that, right? She's talked about how this is just so different and how you have to have patience and be confident and calm. Again, 22 going on 40 or 50, as I said, this is a young woman, now 23. This is a young woman who can handle it, but this is something unlike anything she's dealt with before. Thank you, Joe.
Hi, my name is Art. I want to follow up on the officiating since I think it's such a central issue facing the league and her and other players. So my question, back in the 90s, there were the Jordan rules by Detroit Piston and the bad boys and the hard fouling and the checking and all that stuff. And then the Stern at that time realized, hey, he's our golden goose. They want a free-flowing game, and he's central to the growth of the league. 2 or 3 about that. Why is it that after the Mabry incident, Engelberg doubled down and said, hey, the losers always complain, and there doesn't seem to be any pressure from either the WNBA that subsidizes it, from the NBA that's subsidizing the league, and none of either the owners of NBA teams nor owners of WNBA teams seem to care that they could be risking her with a career-ending or a season-ending injury, given her importance.
Right. Well, I agree with you, and
Hope you do more reporting on that.
Well, I will, but right now I've got a book to sell. So,
right.
if Scribner, my editor, if you're watching the live stream, that's it. I'm not doing the book tour. I'm going to start reporting again. No,
after the book tour.
But here's how important it is. The reason why we've had 2 questions on this topic. When Caitlin Clark missed those 5 games early in the season, the statistic will blow you away. When she was gone in those 5 games, the average attendance, the viewership of the WNBA, literally more than half of it disappeared. More than 50% of the viewership of the WNBA was gone. So Caitlin Clark is responsible for like 53% of the viewership. More than half the people have found something. When Caitlin Clark disappears, more than half of the audience disappears. That is devastating to the WNBA. Now you're probably saying, well, how does this compare to others? Tiger Woods, I looked this up. It's a few percentage points when Tiger was out. It depends. There were some tournaments that were more than others, but not anywhere near 50%. Michael Jordan, when he went to play baseball for a year, again, the numbers, it was nothing like that. It was a few percentage points one way or the other, not falling off the cliff. So that's why this is so important, because she is it. And I know that makes some people angry, and there might be people on the live stream that are watching this and they're mad at me all over again. People not, facts are facts. It's a funny thing about facts. Numbers are numbers, data is data. And I kind of mystified, this is not your question, but I will say this, how people do not understand that when someone is more than 50% of accounts for more than 50% of the viewership and it disappears when it's gone, that's a very big deal. And to just pummel her, well, go right ahead, but that totally impacts your future, right? So anyway, thanks for the question.
Thank you.
I'll stay on it. Yes, sir.
Hi. So your question actually kind of leads into my next question. I'm not to date myself, but I kind of grew up watching basketball in the 80s with Jordan and before that, Born Magic, Lakers, Celtics. And so where you're going with this, like you're talking about Caitlin Clark and how important she is to the league. And I'm wondering, now that she's in her next phase with the WNBA, because she doesn't have a conference like the Big Ten, how important do you think it is for the league as a whole to have sort of a rival, whether it's as a player, whether it's as a team, that people can kind of grow up with and kind of attach to, and maybe not necessarily her equal, but somebody who is on that level where you can, it's not just relying on Caitlin Clark, but it's like Clark versus, whomever.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's certainly the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark thing, but that's where it breaks down. They don't defend each other, play different positions, entirely different athletes. Caitlin is 6 feet tall. Angel Reese is 6'3". That all started, of course, at the end of the LSU victory over Iowa in the 2023 NCAA final, where Angel Reese followed Caitlin around doing the John Cena move, which Caitlin had not done. Angel thought, and everyone thought at the time, Caitlin was doing that to an opponent, Haley Van Lith. Haley Van Lith said, have this all in the book, Haley Van Lith then said, no, Caitlin was doing that to her bench. So the whole thing was based on the wrong premise. And then, of course, Angel was showing her ring right in Caitlin's face. Okay, it was actually probably great for women's basketball, because I will say this, I went down to the Masters to cover that. I wasn't at the women's Final Four because I was going to the Masters. And on Thursday, as Tiger Woods is teeing off for the first round of the Masters, I'm in the press center doing an ABC News Live hit talking about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark 4 days after that game. That's never happened before, right? So that is certainly part of it, even though both of them, there's respect for each other and they like each other well enough. And they certainly remember when they were in the All-Star game last year, when Caitlin had that assist to Angel, it was like the crowd went wild, and it was like the greatest thing that happened at the end of a game, an assist. And then they slapped palms on the way back. So there's that. Paige Beckers, they played today. Paige played well, but her team obviously lost by a lot. And Paige is a great player, but Paige is not an entertainer. And I know I'm going to get texts and emails about that, but she's not. She's a great basketball player. I think when many of you understand, when you realize that Caitlin is an entertainer like Tiger, and the other male golfers were golfers, then I think we start to have the conversation of why Caitlin has separated herself. But there's no doubt that Caitlin and Paige, there's a lot of girls, and I'm sure there was there were 99% number 22 jerseys at Indiana at Gainbridge Fieldhouse today. But I'll bet you that there were probably a good number of Paige jerseys as well. So I think that's it. The other one to watch, Juju Watkins. So the University of Southern California, injured, unfortunately. We'll see if she can come back this year. Now we're moving back in entertainment a little bit there, right? And if Juju gets healthy, can play, she's got another year or two, that will be very interesting. And I think the key point here, and it is numbers, is that if you look at the TV ratings, the college ratings are so much higher than the WNBA, even with Caitlin Clark. So when you have, 18.9 million watching Caitlin Clark and Iowa against South Carolina in 2024, and a great WNBA rating is like 2 million. What does that tell us? That tells us that the appeal is the college game. So especially now with expansion, so more roster spots. We have one team this year, Toronto next year, and then you also have Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia. You're going to have more collegians who have been watched by more fans than the WNBA has been watched by. You put that, infuse the league with all these famous collegians, some of whom we've never heard of yet because they're still in high school. And once they get through college and then go to the WNBA, now you're talking about real personalities. And of course, people say, well, why is the college game getting so many more ratings and viewership than the WNBA? Because it's your college, right? Hello, Iowa. I mean, I didn't know Northwestern had a women's lacrosse team. And then the friend that I met first day freshman year at Northwestern called me one day, and you guys have heard of him. George hired him, and then you hired me because of him. Mike Wilbon calls me and says, are you watching this? And I said, what are you watching? I have no idea what you're talking about. Women's lacrosse. Northwestern's in the final. Now I'm watching women's lacrosse. How about all of us, right? How about when you think of your school? So now you've got that fan base for all these women's basketball players. Get them in the WNBA, and the ratings and what have you would grow up from there. Should we do,
no,
do one more?
So we are almost out of time, but we're not going to deprive you of your questions, those remaining in line. But maybe,
We'll keep it short.
questions, not speeches, please, if possible. And I just have to say that you have to take a question. There's no way I was going to cut this off with Alita Black at the microphone. Possibly the biggest Washington Mystics fan in the history of the WNBA, and a dear friend of mine. So,
Thank you. Oh, no, of course.
Oh, thank you.
Hi,
Well,
Dan.
in the interest of full disclosure, I think Pat Summitt is God. And Judy and I
Summitt was
were
great.
founding fans of the WNBA.
Pat was great. Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the backdrop for my question. I agree that Caitlin Clark is a phenomenal athlete. I agree that she is one of the greatest players in the game. But, what happened to Candace Parker, Rookie of the Year, and, MVP in the Final Four, first player in the history of basketball, male or female, other than Michael Jordan, to do that? What happens to the women who built this league? And I'll give you an example. I love Aaliyah Boston. I mean, I scream for Aaliyah Boston the way everybody in this room screams for Caitlin Clark. I scream for Caitlin too, but I'm AB. AB, when she wins the championship, the first thing she does is she looks up to Candace and she says, Candace Parker, I love you. And so she lifts up the women that came before her. I beg you to get Caitlin to do this. Because, no, wait,
hang on.
not, but she, hear me
yeah.
out. I mean, I'm in a gazillion arguments with black fans about this. And there are ways to do it, and I think that she's got to do a little more.
Okay, and thank you for the question. So in the book, I tell this story, and I hope this is meaningful. It was meaningful to me. So in the 8 days from when Caitlin Clark and South Carolina and Iowa played, South Carolina winning that game, and Caitlin was drafted, of course, first in the WNBA draft. In those 8 days, she won some awards, and she was all over the place. She also appeared on Saturday Night Live. So that's an audience that is so rare for a female athlete, right? That's really rare. And, of course, a crossover audience, right? Cultural. So you're reaching a lot of people. And I think you probably know what she did, but in case some of you don't, first of all, the banter back and forth with the guys on Weekend Update. And then she turned in and looked in the camera and said, I want to thank all the players who came before me, who opened the door now that I'm walking through. And every single player she named, including the great Maya Moore, was black. Does that mean nothing to you?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's extraordinary. I'm saying she has irrational pressure put on her. I totally get it. I'm
like,
just saying.
like a male dominant, like a male sports team.
Yeah.
That's
But
not
there are
irrational,
ways
that's
to
called
keep doing it. We
success.
got to help her. And the one thing that I would like to make a tweak about your private planes
we've
are,
got
and then
two
I'll
more.
shut up. But Brittany Griner was also walking through airports on regular flights, and people were trying to slug her in the airport.
It's all in the book. It's all in the book. I promise
long
you,
as
I
we get
cover
that.
everything in the book. The point was, Caitlin Clark is so much more popular than Brittany Griner. And as I said earlier, and I'll say it again to make it crystal clear,
Yeah.
I so wish that this had happened for Candace Parker.
Yeah.
I so wish. But keep in mind, I've covered the WNBA since the 90s.
I know.
I was getting laughed at when I would be on sports talk shows talking about it, and the guys were laughing because they said that they're rolling around and it's only jump balls. That's fine. Go ahead. I stayed on the show, of course, and kept talking. The point I'm saying is that this is different. This is the moment. So the question is, do you accept it and run with it, or do we complain about it and does it bother
No,
us?
I want to use it. I don't want to complain
Okay, well,
about
then
it. I
that's
want
great.
to use it.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much for the question. Yes, sir.
Oh, hi, my name's Ruben. You might not remember me. We were colleagues for a couple of years at the Post back in the
Ruben.
day.
Hi, good to see you.
Congratulations. I'll be direct. Post basketball career, what do you think's more likely for Caitlin Clark? Coaching, GM, team ownership?
Yeah, well, I think we're a long way, hopefully, from that for her, right? But she already was one of the part owners and a bid to have a NWSL women's soccer league team in Cincinnati. They picked Denver. I'm sure Denver is a very worthy place to have the women's soccer league. But if you've got a chance, if you're a soccer league and you've got a chance to have Caitlin Clark be one of your owners, I don't know, but if you look at all the TV ratings, and if you want TV ratings and sponsors and have all the attention, you might have picked Cincinnati because then you're bringing Caitlin Clark right in as well. But obviously that's not my decision, and I'm just an observer from afar. So I think she's going to get involved in all of that. She's a tremendous speaker, super smart, very funny. Really is stunningly mature, confident, strong for someone who's 23. I can only imagine what she'll be like when she's 40. Maybe she'll be president. I have no idea. But whatever she wants to do, she'll do it. And think about this and consider this. For all these years, we have, had our men, the Bill Bradleys of the world, right? All men play sports and then become our leaders in our country. Well, now, because of Title IX, 53 years old, now we're, of course, giving all of our daughters, nieces, granddaughters, the girl next door, the opportunity to win at a young age and also to learn how to lose at a young age, which is so much more important. Teamwork, sportsmanship, leadership, physical fitness. Well, that 10-year-old girl that's getting full Title IX sports immersion right now, when she's 50, oh my goodness. What is this country going to look like? You're going to have women presidents throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s. It has to happen. I know. But it has to happen because all of these young women, including the nieces that I introduced, all of them have had sports immersion, life lessons, not turning them into Olympic, athletes, but making them stronger, greater leaders of our country. And so Caitlin Clark is right there, full blast, early part of this century, getting that Title IX 2.5 years after Brianna Scurry and the soccer team. A little girl is born in Des Moines, Iowa. This is the stepping stone. It's not just a sports story. It's a cultural story. It's a historic story. And so there's no doubt in my mind that it's an American story, that Caitlin Clark will be a huge part of our lives as long as we're alive. And for the youngest people in the room, she will be a part of, in terms of our culture and ownership, as you said, everything. I think the sky's the limit. She's a great speaker and loves to do a lot of events that way too. So we could see a lot. Thank you, Ruben. And I think is this going to be our last
question.
one?
Last question.
Yes.
Ma'am, you were
yes.
in line.
Hi there.
Well, I
Sorry.
just want to say thank you for coming, being here, and thank you for obviously supporting women's sports. I played in college. My dad and I coached.
Speak into the mic, please, because we're taping this.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say thank you for being here and supporting women's sports. I played in college. My dad and I coached my high school softball team, so I just want to thank you for that. But what I was wondering is ever since my dad and I've coached and I've played, obviously, if you have an amazing player like Caitlin, you obviously, you're like, all right, she's going to, have control of the ball. But why is it that since she's come into the league last season and then this season, coaches have kind of put her in the corner a little bit? Obviously, unlike right now, they've given her the ball. So I just kind of was wondering if I just pick your brain a little bit. Why do you think that is? You have this amazing player, and why they're kind of coaches are kind of referring back to like their methods as opposed to, hey, we got this amazing player. Let's give the ball to her. We know she can do this. She can throw the Hail Marys. I was just wondering why you think
No,
that
it's a
is.
question about strategy, and it's something,
Yeah.
again, that is certainly out there in the social media world, for sure. And the idea being that sometimes Caitlin plays off the ball. So she's a point guard. She brings the ball down the court. We've all seen that, right? She brings the ball down, and then like at the University of Maryland when we all went to the game, and she's literally just heaving it, and you just sat down and you can't even believe, and it's going in, and there you go, and it's 3-0. And that's what we're used to seeing, and that again is the entertainment value that I've talked about over and over again. We cannot discount that. That is exactly what's going on here. So then now she's in the corner. And now it's going to come around on a screen, a ball screen or whatever. And I watched that happen. I didn't watch much of today's game, but definitely a few times she's coming back around and she's got the ball. I think it's certainly so that she can get a little bit of a rest because she is being guarded the length of the floor. And that's the other thing when the Olympic team is not picking her. They're saying, well, she's not playing well. She was getting guarded and blitzed, double teamed, whatever, more than any other player in the league as a first-year player, rookie, right off the bat. So that means that they're looking at her as the most important player in the league. And yet then they're saying, well, she's not good enough to make the Olympic team. These are the kind of decisions that just look awful, and it's unfortunate that of course, that happened, and I do go into that in detail. So that is real, right? If you're just having to work to get the ball up all the time, obviously then you're going to flummox the defense a little when all of a sudden it's not Caitlin bringing the ball up. So I think that's a bit of strategy. But there's no doubt when you're watching them run and gun like they were today, that worked. And I think you're going to see more of it. Again, she's been, as to the question earlier, she's been injured. The first time this has ever happened in her career. She's not, I think it's pretty clear to say she's not even 100% right now. I don't know, and I will never speculate, but she's working her way back in. So I understand your frustration and the frustration of millions of fans who want to see her literally every time running down the floor. I do too. I think she does too, because she loves doing that. But I also think it's preservation, a coaching staff. Stephanie White is the coach this year. Christy Sides, the coach last year, I think did a fine job. The end of the year, they got that team going. She's throughout the book as well. The great, the coach there last year, and then of course was let go. Now the great Stephanie White is there, Indiana Fever legend. So I think what you're going to see is it's smart coaching, but it's not always appealing to the fans. But longevity for Caitlin Clark is, of course, important for Caitlin Clark, but it's also important for the Fever, for their playoff runs this year and the future. And that's, again, as I've said over and over, clearly for the future, the financial future of the WNBA as well. So, thank you for that question. I appreciate it. But you're not alone on that. And I just want to say, I know we're going to now do this part of our evening. We can certainly talk a little bit if there's any questions that you haven't had a chance to ask. We can definitely chat. But I just want to say, again, a huge thank you as I look in your faces of so many friends, colleagues, neighbors, family. This just means so much to me. It truly is a celebration for me of something that is a project that, as I said, a year ago, and 3 days ago, I had no idea I was doing this. And here it is, one of the highlights of my career, and certainly this night right now is one of the highlights of the year. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you all for coming. If you haven't